really 5 things that are going to be weighted in your credit score. And then as long as you play within those rules, you should have a good credit score. So number 1 is obviously the payment history. Make sure that you make your payments on time. That's fine. I'm sure that everybody knows that. Now, that's gonna weigh your credit score about 35%. Now, 30% of that, it's the amount of debts you have. But this is what's interesting about this. The amount of debts you have is not really a dollar figure, but it's the percentage of debts you have versus what your credit limit is. So when it comes to credit reporting, when it comes to credit score, if you have a credit card, then the limit of that credit card, it's $1,000 and you owe $500, is just as bad as if you had a credit card where the limit is $10,000 and you owed $5,000, because it's not the dollar amount, is the percentage of how much you owe versus that credit limit. And that takes me to my number 1 tip, and the easiest way to bring that credit score up is simply by making sure that you keep those percentages below 20%. If you make sure that you keep those percentages down, then I've seen sometimes credit scores for my clients jump a lot, about 100 points sometimes. So again, this happens a lot when you have, the first credit cards that you ever got, which normally are gonna have a lower limit, let's say $200, even $300. Well, if the limit is $300, even if you owe $150, which is not necessarily a lot of money when it comes to being in debt, well, that's 50% of the max that you can get on that card, and that's really going to affect your credit report negatively. Again, we're talking about 35% is payments on time, and 30% is that percentage. So having a high percent on a credit card, it's gonna affect you almost as much as if you weren't making your payments on time. So this is one of the easiest ways to improve that credit score. Now, another tip, and this is something that, sometimes I talk to my clients and I'm like, hey, we really need to make sure that we drop these percentages. And they tell me, look, Ed, I can do that, but then if I do that, I'm not gonna have enough money for the down payment, let's say, or things like that. Well, another trick to do that is, instead of lowering that balance that you have, well, why don't you call the credit company and ask them to increase the credit limit? Because if you increase the credit limit, well, then that amount that you owe now, it's gonna decrease based on percentages. That's gonna have the same effect as if you were to make some payments. So that's one of those, hacks, if you will, that we use a lot, is simply calling the creditors, calling that credit card, trying to increase that credit limit, and that's gonna help you substantially when it comes to your credit report.